Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Leading Beyond Ego podcast, where we focus on helping leaders around the world move beyond ego and lead more consciously. I'm thrilled to introduce today our guest, Birgir Jonsson, CEO of Play Airlines. Birgir, as he's called, has an unorthodox career. He's built up a booming business in Eastern Europe. He's been in successful business development in the Far East, has built up an international airline, and is a passionate heavy rock drummer. What we talked about was how he's learned that a more humble, leading from the back, servant type of leadership is more successful, how it brings out the best in everyone around him. Pretty much like in his band, where the drummer needs the rest of the band to make the music beautiful. What most surprised me, though, is a story, and you want to stay tuned for this, was when him and the rest of the heavy rock band went to a group therapy session to really figure out a way to work better together as a team. So stay tuned for Birgir Jonsson, the CEO of Play Airlines, in just a moment. So Birgir, you've been working in different parts of the world, in different industries, different businesses, and one of the questions that comes up in my mind immediately when I meet someone like you is, what stands out? What's been the most challenging, most rewarding part of your career so far?
Well, that's a difficult question. I guess the most challenging part has been realizing that you can't really do anything by yourself. You need to, you up to a really big degree, you're reliant upon other people. Mm-hmm. And the second part of the answer is the most rewarding part is also that you have kind of, I've gotten to know so many people, I've worked with so many great people, I've learned so much from them, that accepting the challenge and reaping the rewards, just to work in a team and realizing that you will always have better results if you work with people is really what is my kind of lesson from all this, from this strange career.
Yeah. I mean, building up a printing business in Eastern Europe, being in the prosthetics, braces, orthopedic solutions in Far East, and then building up an international airline. Not to mention turn around the Icelandic postal service. I guess you coming into these industries, you were new to them and needed other people. Or what made you realize that you needed to work through others?
Well, I mean, when you say it like this obviously looks really schizophrenic and completely crazy. But and a very Icelandic CV, actually, because I'm not sure people in other countries could have these kind of careers. But, I mean, going from my kind of roots or from the society that I come from, we are a very small nation. It's built within us, I guess, that we can't do everything. We can't do anything. You are just as good as anyone else. Yep. And we have, at least me, I come from a very solid background. I have a very big belief in myself. I'm very confident. And sometimes that I'm sure when I was younger could go into arrogance. So it was a challenge to me when I went into a situation, for example, when I moved to Hong Kong and I was building a business in China, and I did the same when I moved to Romania and I was running a fairly large business in Romania, Hungary, and Bulgaria, to face the situation that I really didn't have the tools. I couldn't do things. And that was a big kind of learning moment and a very humbling experience to realize that you couldn't just take it on the chest and kind of rip it and just do it and be the man. You had to kind of use other people and create some kind of a dynamic. Yeah. So that's an important point.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about your career is your passion for music and being a drummer in a heavy rock band. If you look back to the days of being in a band and running a band, what are some of the similarities you see to leading teams in business?
Well, my idea of myself, or let's say my self-image, is as a musician.
Yeah.
I mean, that was what I did when I was younger, as a professional when I was fairly young and before I went into studies and business. So for me, I have never defined myself as a businessman.
Okay.
I'm always kind of a businessman. That's my moonlighting gig from my music.
Okay.
So my kind of, I feel very at home in a creative environment. So whereas I realize that many of my artist friends look at me as a corporate slave, but that's a thing. But I see it again. Maybe this is a very simplistic way of looking at things, but I just see, whether it's a company or a department or a band or whatever, it's always a group of people trying to achieve something.
Absolutely.
Trying to achieve a goal. The group is made out of individuals that come to the table with their own experiences, goals, things and pluses and minuses, strengths and weaknesses. So it's, in my mind, it's always the same kind of process, how to get that group, help the group to kind of achieve the goal. Is it to market a new product? Is it to launch a new destination in an airline? Is it to do whatever? Is it to make an album? Whatever. Yeah. Just what is the common purpose and goal of the team?
Yeah. And this podcast, as you know, is about helping managers and leaders move beyond ego and become more conscious of how they lead. And sometimes when we begin that discussion, we need to first understand, what is ego? What does it look like in the workplace? And if we stay with the music industry that you were in, and you think about ego, and I'm assuming they're not exempt from it. It applies to them as it does to all of us. What does it look like when ego goes too far on a band, a rock band?
I think most artists and musicians are driven by some kind of creative urge mixed in with insecurities and ego as a protection, as a defense mechanism.
Yeah,
and I've always found it very beautiful experience. Because as you mentioned, I've mostly been in kind of heavy metal and hard rock situations where you have big guys, tattooed guys, beards, and really kind of tough guys, but they meet like 4 or 5 times a week, usually in a run-down room somewhere with their instruments, and they begin to create noise that is supposed to make other people feel something great or scared or whatever, evoke emotion. And that is a really beautiful thing, just that people do that. They come together, let's make noise that people, So and in that process, you have to bare your heart and say, listen, I did this. I think this would be nice. And you have to kind of lay it on the table, and you have to wait for the other bandmate to say, I like it, or I don't like it, or and he's either complimenting you or he's crushing your.
So that brings up insecurities, maybe?
Insecurities, anger.
Yeah.
It's like, you didn't like what I did yesterday, I'm not going to like what you did now. I might love it, but because you never like my ideas, why should I like your ideas? Yeah. And then there's another guy in the band that says, I mean, he's my friend, and you're always, these kind of dynamics that are, and I've seen so many beautiful musical situations and bands, and you can see just if you look at just music history in general, how many big bands break up. Yeah. And if you think about this in a business sense, because these are entities that record companies and someone has invested money in, but no one is thinking about the dynamics of the team. And in a corporate setting, you would have coaches, or you would have leadership thinking, and you would in a sports environment you have the coach, and you have what is called the guy that controls the team. Manager, coach, the leader or whatever, captain, whatever. But in a band, it's usually not. So the group has to kind of control itself, and usually it explodes because when you release an album and then you go on a tour, and if you're a very famous band, you come back after 2 years, and the drummer goes back to his Toyota, the singer and the guitar player drive away in the Rolls Royce, and the band breaks up.
Yeah.
This is the oldest story in the book, and this is all about ego. This is all about how, and if you can kind of manage this, the creative process is better, the end product is going to be better, the experience of everyone is going to be more enjoyable.
Absolutely.
The investment of the shareholders, like in this case the record company, is going to be more secure and more profitable.
Yep.
So but when you say eco and when you talk about these kind of sensitive soft issues, we become, I don't, why do I need to change? We can, this is, what do you think, I'm sick? Or, why should I talk about these kind of
am I not good enough?
Soft, womanly things, as a heavy metal star?
You told me about an unusual situation you had on a certain band that was struggling with these issues you've just described, and you took a rather unusual and I'd say humble way of sorting things out. Would you mind sharing that with us? Yeah,
I mean, that's one of the kind of scenarios where my two lives have roped. Whereas I was in a band and I had the luxury to take kind of a hiatus from my real life, grown up life, and be in a band that was and still is actually quite popular, at least in Iceland.
Yeah.
And a professional band and quite a nice band actually, and we were having these kind of problems. We just had to plan the next 18 months. We had full-time staff working for the band. We had to basically release an album and book shows and do all kinds of things. But we simply could not communicate. We didn't know how to. We didn't want to meet and write. When we did, it ended up in a huge fight. Everyone was feeling lousy.
So what did you do?
We just did exactly what I would do now in a corporate situation. I just convinced them that we could use the help of someone externally to come and help us communicate. Yeah. And so we went simply to a therapist that explained to us, and she worked with us individually and then as a group, and she explained to us, why is Birgir saying these things? What are his expectations from this? And when he behaves like this, why is it? And she drew it on a map, and this is your role in the group, and someone felt that if I had a criticism of you, and I was always bitching to him about it, and he was always asking, why don't you just talk to him about it? Yeah. No, he's never gonna listen to me, and
making assumptions about reactions.
And people are having these kind of major debates in their head with a guy sitting next to them without saying a word. And so you can just feel the tension building, and we were traveling around and playing, and everyone was friends on stage and kind of hugging, and then we didn't see each other the whole weekend.
So you actually had
when you see this drawn up on a map, on a wall chart, you begin to realize that we have the same objective. We are in the same boat, but we have different strengths and weaknesses, and you just realize that we love each other, we trust each other, we want to do this together, but we have to acknowledge that we are different people.
Yeah.
And this, in that scenario, was mind-blowing. And okay, what happened? We did probably our best album.
On the back of that.
On the back of that. And the communication was much more. I mean, I'm not going to say the issues went away, but we had tools to deal with them. Yeah. And that's the same thing as I see in my work. And it's like you have to have the same kind of playing field, so you can speak to your teammates with some kind of terminology that they understand, so you can begin to move together using the same tools.
Yeah. I have to admit that I keep seeing this image in my mind of these rockers sitting there in a group therapy session. What did it take for you to convince them to actually do this? Because I know some managers in the corporate world, they struggle sometimes to get their teams to come and let's talk openly about our issues. And so I imagine, what did it take?
Well, of course, there was never any doubt that there was a lot of love in the group.
Okay.
And a lot of trust and a very deep friendship going back 10, 15 years.
Okay.
So once you kind of open up to that and people are vulnerable and these are not monsters. I mean, everyone can feel that you're stuck in a rut. And when you kind of just open your heart and say, guys, and there were tears. And again, this is creative environment. People, we are used to opening up ourselves. And the reason we are successful is that we have been working together. And I just gave this as one of the options that could be used, and they were open to it. And this was not by no means like me taking them. It was just my idea, and they were open to it. We met a therapist that, of course, it's all the credit to her to then convince the group, because she only needed to talk to each member like for half an hour before everyone felt that this was the right way forward. It was not. You only had to kind of throw the spark in there, and then
it's fascinating to hear you mention words like there was a lot of love, and we needed vulnerability. And people spoke with emotion, and there were tears, which means that you were as a group, you were successful in letting down that ego defense, that survival mechanism that kicks in, and going beyond it. And I'm wondering, what's your experience been in the corporate world of doing similar things? I know you've held CEO positions in very challenging organizations, doing challenging things. So what's your experience with that, getting corporate people to do something similar that didn't have the 10 years of love that your rock colleagues had?
I mean, most people talk about sport, and they're kind of, when they are describing situations, they talk about sport, and a team does this, and the goalie does that, and something. My reference is always music and how bands work. And I really think that it's extremely similar, if not precisely the same.
Okay.
And when you have been, I'm not gonna kind of overstate it, but at least in an Icelandic setting, I have been fortunate enough to be quite successful as a musician. So I've known that what works and what doesn't work, and kind of basic things like the best bands. I used the example, for example, of the Rolling Stones, the greatest rock and roll band that ever was, or Metallica, the greatest heavy metal band that ever was.
Okay.
They're not made up of the best musicians. And probably most of the individuals in those bands would not have made it as professional session musicians, because they're...
Oh, really? Yeah.
But there's something that happens, the dynamic, some X factor that happens, obviously the music that is written, something that happens that the team does.
Yeah.
And when you have at least some, I have to learn it, some people maybe have it, that kind of humble approach. And that you come to a team, and this is always my approach, because I've been, like you say, in some kind of a fixing, turnaround, kind of restructuring capacity in most of my career. People always think that I would enter that kind of scenario as a dictator, as Birgir, he always fires everyone. He's so tough. He doesn't have any feelings. So when you come on a completely different angle, and you're humble, and you say, listen, I don't have the answers. I don't know how we can do this. I have no idea. I was hired here to do it. The only thing I know that there's no one else that is better than us in the room to do it. Let's see what we can do. And that is disarming to people. And they feel that someone is willing to listen to them. I mean, I come in a situation, I don't open my laptop for like 2 weeks. I just talk to people. And I get to know people. And I get the ideas up and flowing. And then you kind of slowly just feel that things began to roll. And you create that groove that is so essential in the Rolling Stones, for example. And it's never because coming from a strong kind of position, authoritative position to kind of get everyone in a room and say, listen, guys, this is the plan. I'm here. The Icelandic Post is doing really badly. I'm hired. This is our plan.
No, that's not your way.
It would never work.
No.
even if I had the answers, that I wouldn't get buy-in in the group. I wouldn't get collective kind of the collective firepower.
Yeah. Now, Birgir, I've had the privilege of observing you in action as a leader of an organization, and I noticed that you tend to lead from the back with very much a servant leadership style, and drummers sit in the back on a stage. Do you think there is a correlation? Did you learn that through the role of the drummer, or what are your thoughts on that?
No, precisely. Again, this is always my reference point. I don't know if. I mean, there are different types of people that select different types of instruments. And I know that people that tend to work in the basis or the background of music, for example, like sound engineers or drummers or bass players or something, we take joy and professional kind of joy out of creating a basis or a playing field, and going and so you're sitting there, you're playing, and you are enjoying that the singer is singing a great song, and you can see the reaction, and you know that the thing is working. The guitar player is doing his solo in a spotlight, and you know that no one can see you, but everyone can feel you. Same thing as I have, and genuinely, and many people don't really believe me, I have, when I'm, for example, running a company and someone comes to me and said, listen, I'm going to give my notice because I've been offered this great job. I love working here, but it's such a great opportunity for me. A lot of, it's a big promotion, big salary raise, whatever. I get like personal enjoyment out of that. It's like, I feel like, okay, this is a great opportunity for you. Obviously, this is a great acknowledgement of what we have done together, because people are stealing you because we are doing a great job. And that's kind of, if you can create an environment where people really feel that they get to kind of shine. That is also the reason I haven't had these kind of discussions that often, because if you do that also, people don't leave. No, they are happy.
Yeah. At the moment, you're building up an airline. It's a brand new airline. Play. It's for those watching, you can find it on flyplay.com. And I know that it's important to you that managers in this business learn to lead from beyond ego. And if you imagine that you are successful in this, leading in this way that you've been describing to us, what are some of the outcomes that you see as let's say, the biggest benefits, also for the people listening or watching? What's in it for them if they move beyond ego in the way you've been describing it?
I mean, it's easy to it's easy to put it in some quantitative terms, business terms, and I'm not going to do that. I think that if you have found the joy of being in a great band. If you have been on stage and you have had the feeling that you are in a group of 4 or 5 people and you are functioning as one, you're like we don't have to talk, we don't have to have anything rehearsed. We just feel what we're doing. We are just working as a team. That's such a unique experience. That would be my kind of wish, that my colleagues at Play get to experience this feeling, that this is not this kind of this kind of it's so easy to say, oh, we are a family, we're one big family, but it's not really. You have to have the feeling that we are one. And I had a mentor in music that described to me very such a vivid terms the old cowboy movies. And you see the cowboys they're with their wagons and the wheels are turning. And then at one point the wheels they turn backwards.
It looks that way.
It's like a visual kind of visual
effect.
And his kind of example was, if you're playing music and that happens, you are grooving. And that's the same thing has happened in a team.
Nice
analogy. So when you kind of feel that we're accomplishing great things, we know precisely what we're doing. There's no kind of bad feeling. We're just nailing it. You're flying.
Yeah.
You know, and that is a unique feeling. I've had the privilege of feeling this a few times in not as many as I would have liked, but that would be my kind of genuine kind of wish that the people at play feel that at some point among themselves. Not that I have to be the guy, just like create that environment.
So would you say that once you've felt this groove, you've felt what it brings, that it makes the other team members shine and perform, you seek to repeat it in different situations?
It's like a good drug, you know. Of course, it's like love or whatever. It's like, you know, you want to have that hit, and then you have to do some analysis of why did it happen.
Yeah,
and it did not happen because someone took too many solos, or took too much credit, or had too much kind of stage light on him. You know, there's a mixture of things. That everything is correct. That is not easy to replicate. Yeah. But at the same time, it does not happen by itself.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Like
culture and things like that, and what we're really talking about is something that has to be grown and systematically formed. Yeah. It doesn't just happen because we had a great party on Saturday.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm reminded the former CEO of General Electric, Jack Welch, once asked what quality he was looking for in managers. And he said, after thinking about it for a while, he said, I need people who are comfortable standing on the sidelines and cheering as their team members score the goals. I don't need someone who needs to score all the goals themselves, which would be the more ego-driven way. And so you're obviously saying, or your message to managers is be humble, lead more from the back, give people the opportunity to find a groove together, and then that will bring out the best in everyone. Is that correctly summarized, or am I missing something?
It's absolutely correctly summarized. And to add to that, if your drive as a leader is to get all the credit, and is to get all the kind of awards for reaching the best or gaining the most success, this is the way to do it, because the other thing doesn't work. So even if you start from a impure place, and if you want to be the man, this is the way to achieve it. You know, do you know what I mean? It's like
absolutely.
So because the other thing of like this old military kind of top-down management, it doesn't work in the long term.
No.
And you get much more success by doing it this way, rather than trying to be a know-it-all and being more kind of a fear-based kind of, you know, that kind of old school leader.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. Now, coming towards the end of our time here together, I'm thinking, okay, so this sounds great. This sounds really inspiring. And I'm sure that some people listening are thinking, okay, so how do I do this? How do I get to that place? How do I work on myself? Do you have any advice or thoughts on what managers, regardless of their age or experience, could do to move in this direction beyond ego?
I mean, it's simple to say that you should work with someone or you should read books or whatever, but I think the main thing is some kind of having the ability to communicate openly and honestly your honest needs or your honest thoughts.
Okay, because what do you mean by that? Your honest needs?
Because even though I'm sitting here and I'm trying to display myself as some kind of a enlightened being, I'm struggling with this on a daily basis. I mean, I'm struggling with ego in a big, especially I'm running a startup company. Yeah. Sometimes things don't go as I want them to go. I'm not completely happy with some member of my management team or whatever, and my ego flares up.
Yes.
And I want to take control, and I want to kind of, you know,
there you go.
And you know, because that's me. I would not have done all these things without having some kind of a basic belief that when the shit hits the fan, I'm the guy to be there. And that's not, you know, so being a heavy metal drummer, I mean, you know, you just beat things up and it's a power, you're based on power. So this is why when I talk about ego with people like Birgir, really? Yeah. Because you are a bull. You know?
Yeah.
But you have to be vulnerable. You have to say to people, you know, I think that we should do this. Maybe we should have a coach. We should talk together, whatever. But I can't do this by myself. Just to look that into, face that.
So, yes, I mean, obviously you have drive and ambition on behalf of the projects that you take. And in that sense, you are bullish in the way you push things forward. But you're saying, if I understand you correctly, it's about realizing that this bull can do damage and that you need to tame it. You need to understand it. And what are your needs in that area, and be vulnerable and admit that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and that's a constant. It's not something you do just one day and then it's fixed. It's a constant. You have to constantly remind yourself of it, because it's so easy to break things or leave things. You know, so it's a very dynamic thing, and you know, it's something that you have to merge your professional life with your personal life also. I mean, and just for me, going through these kind of thoughts has had a profound effect on me as a person also. The way I talk to people, the way I behave, the way you are somehow moving in, you are maturing.
I mean, obviously, me and my team working with managers around the world, we see this is never done in a day. This is never constant. And like you said, it's constant work on yourself to be aware. Am I being too bullish? Am I being humble? Am I being vulnerable? And what is appropriate for the current situation?
And just going back to my music, I mean, it's always been my dream to be in a successful band and to have 2,000 people in them that are paid to get in and bought my albums and wear my T-shirts and I want to play the drums. That would never have happened if I would only just be myself and play by myself and play the drums. It always I needed other people to fulfill my dream, to reach my success. And when you kind of are open to that and you realize that and you're humble to that those people also have their own kind of needs, and you can harmonize it, then the magic begins to happen.
Birgir, that sounds like a fantastic final message to the people listening and watching. So I'd just like to say it's been an honor and a thrill to have you on this show today. And I think there are a lot of takeaways from someone who's been there, done that, has the T-shirt, and knows what he's talking about. Thank you for coming on to the show.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot.